conference is designed to support, strengthen, and elevate women at CUNY through discussions and networking with some of the university's most innovative and dynamic leaders who will be able to provide insight into what it takes to advance within the CUNY system and obliterate any and all notions of a glass ceiling.
All of these women and more taught me how to see leadership, desire to be around people who are smart, not be ashamed of who I am, how to listen more than I talk, and how to embrace the fact that you can do anything you want.
I think for all of us, you wind up feeling that there's something important in here, in your heart, and you know you're motivated that way, and trying to figure it out. So we are studying at a lower salary, which means that when you put money into your retirement account, it's based on that salary, so less money goes in, and then we live longer.
Do the work to prepare yourself for the job, the leadership positions you want to take on.
You're going to be challenged every step of the way, and you need the stamina, and you need the sort of the mental agility and rest. So take care of yourself.
Don't let self-doubt sabotage you, right? Do not let it get in there and grow, and you really worry, are you good enough? Did you do this right? Do not let self-doubt, right, sabotage you.
Throughout the way, I've had so many wonderful mentors and people that have inspired me and believed in me and inspired me to be better. So thank you all for what you do, and I'm just grateful to be here.
Good morning. I'm Dorianne Gloria, Vice Chancellor for Human Resources at CUNY. I'm honored to welcome you this morning to the second annual CUNY Career Compass for Women Leaders Conference. Because we're virtual this year, more participants can attend this great event, which will take place over 2 days, today and next Friday, March 26th. I want to take a moment to note that the conference is being held during Women's History Month, which is certainly a cause for celebration. Throughout time, women have contributed to our societies and our world in a vast array of roles and across all fields of study and practice, most often in the face of significant barriers. Today, the development of women leaders continues to grow in both importance and scope. This year's topic is developing your executive presence, and it promises to be a unique opportunity for sharing and learning as you craft your own approach and personal style of leadership. This morning, I also have the honor of introducing our Chancellor, Dr. Felix Matos Rodriguez, who knows a bit about executive presence. He has some thoughts to share with you as we begin, so please join me in welcoming him to this wonderful event. Chancellor.
Thank you so much, Dorianne, and good morning, buenos dias. Thank you again, Dorianne, for that introduction. And Dorianne, talking about role models, is someone who's dedicated her career in human resources to increasing the access and opportunity of those in vulnerable communities. She's an incredible role model and a resource. And I'm happy that she's participating in the conference, but I'm also very, very proud to have her as a key member of our executive team at the CUNY Central Office. I'd like to formally welcome everyone to the second annual CUNY Career Compass for Women Leaders Conference, Developing Your Executive Presence. The objective of this great forum is to support, strengthen, and elevate CUNY women by engaging in dynamic discussions and valuable networking opportunities to introduce insights into what it takes to advance at CUNY and beyond. We don't want anybody leaving CUNY, right? But we want to get you ready for anything that you might be ready to face in your professional journey. I urge everyone to please take advantage of the professional development opportunities so you can put into practice what you learned today. This year's conference, like most events in the past 12 months, is virtual due to the pandemic. And while I, and I'm sure all of you, long for the day, hopefully very soon, when we can share each other's company, holding the conference in this way allows for the participation of thousands of women across CUNY, as Vice Chancellor Gloria mentioned in her introductory remarks. As we reflect on the 1-year anniversary of our move to distance learning, let us acknowledge the challenges that everyone across CUNY has experienced, both personally and professionally. Most importantly, we acknowledge the strength and resilience of the CUNY community and of CUNY women in persevering through so many hardships and struggles. We know the pandemic has disproportionately affected communities of color. We also know the pandemic has undone years of progress in the area of gender equality in the workplace, adding more stresses to the lives of working mothers and forcing them to make impossibly difficult decisions. We know that closing opportunity gaps for women at this time is sound economic policy because it would help boost the economy and kickstart the cities and states' recovery. CUNY believes in confronting these gender disparities head on and in nurturing the careers of women and helping them to achieve their full potential as leaders. This conference is a great place to address inequities and share and exchange ideas and to move forward in your thinking in how you perceive your career goals. Throughout my career at CUNY, I have surrounded myself with strong, talented women in leadership positions, mindful of the ripple effects these appointments can have on the next wave of women leaders waiting in the wings. When I assumed the role of chancellor, some of my first hires and appointments were those of women. I was eager to make use of their decades of experience and success, and I'm proud to say that they remain an integral part to the function and direction of my administration and the course that we have set as a university together. So today we celebrate you, a diverse and talented group of women leaders who believe in the durability and necessity of the CUNY mission and our guiding principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We see you and we believe in your promise and your potential as future leaders. We're proud to have so many accomplished women at CUNY paving the way and serving as role models for the next generation. And we're thrilled to have their involvement in this two-day conference. They are change agents like CUNY trustees Mayra Linares Garcia, Jean O'Donnell Tormey, that I'm going to be introducing in a few minutes, and Sandra Wilkin, whom you will be hearing from over in this two-day conference at different times. And Senior Vice Chancellor for Institutional Affairs and Special Counsel Brenda Grace, who has inspiring words to share for her years of legal work in the social justice arena. We're also incredibly fortunate to have Kingsborough Community President Claudia Schrader, Macaulay Honors College Dean Mary Pearl, and your college president Bernicia Johnson Eanes participating in today's fireside chat. And we look forward to hearing from John Jay's College President Carol B. Mason, Ostos Community College Interim President Daisy Coco de Filippis, and Queensborough Community College President Christine Mangino in next week's fireside chat. I would like to thank the planning team at Central who put together such a compelling and strong program for all of us. They are co-chaired by the incredibly Chief of Staff and Associate Vice Chancellor, Dolly Martinez, a force of nature, who has led this conference the last 2 years as a personal labor of love. So thank you so much, Dolly, for your leadership and your perseverance and your belief in the importance of developing the careers of everyone at CUNY, but particularly of women. Also, thanks to the Chief of Staff to the President of Baruch College, Kenya Lee, who is moderating the fireside chats. And the other planning team members, the CEO of D. Patrick Consulting and Baruch College professor, Denise Patrick, who is speaking on creating leadership opportunities later this morning. Interim Vice Chancellor for Advancement, Andrea Shapiro Davis, will lend her shrewd insights into networking for one of the breakout sessions. Nisha Howard, the Chief of Staff to Andrea Shapiro Davis, will provide welcoming remarks on the second day of the conference. My other partner, Felix Vargas, the Director of Events and Management, and Tercid Pimentel, his assistant, who make all our events at CUNY run like clockwork. And when things go wrong, it's our fault, not theirs. And finally, the entire CUNY Central HR training team, led by training manager Despina Cuvaros and Fatima Hernandez, who's Dolly Martinez's assistant, who are so instrumental in making sure that everything behind the scenes works. We're also thrilled to have today's keynote speaker, Meera Joshi, who was appointed by President Biden in January as the Deputy Administrator of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, an agency under the U.S. Department of Transportation. She is the former commissioner of the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission and has worked to root out corruption and be a champion of equitable distribution of services to vulnerable New Yorkers throughout her entire life and professional career. We also look forward to hearing from next week's keynote speaker, Diane Billings-Buford, a fellow Yale graduate who has dedicated her life to social justice, education, and helping to open doors for members of underserved communities. She is the CEO of the Ross Initiative in Sports for Equality, or RISE, its acronym. There is a striking amount of talent on display at this conference. And while last year's setting was structured for in-person network opportunities, I urge you all not to let the difference in scenery lessen the impact of what you can get here today. Absorb the remarks from our speakers. Contemplate the lessons they share, their explanation of how they eradicated barriers that once impeded their progress. Think about how you can apply these lessons to your own situation, to your own life, and create your own gateway to opportunities and actionable steps to pursue your goals to effective, positive change. Because when the time comes that this pandemic and the pandemic emergency is lifted, you will most definitely be stronger, more resilient, and better prepared and informed of what you experience because of what you experience and learn here today. So I thank you for your participation. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the next speaker, an academic leader, a scientific leader, a civic leader, and a distinguished member of our Board of Trustees, the Honorable Dr. Jill O'Donnell Tormey, who is a CUNY trustee, who, when she's not doing the lots of work that we ask our trustees to do, she has a real full-time job, and she is the CEO and the Director of Scientific Affairs at the Cancer Research Institute. And from that position, she has served to advance scientific research and enhance the field of cancer therapy. It is so good to have her with us today. So please join me in clapping very hard so we can hear it all virtually and enjoy the remarks from Trustee Jill O'Donnell Tormey. Trustee?
Hello. This is Jill O'Donnell Tormey, and thank you very much, Chancellor, for that introduction. I am honored. Oops, stop my video. Sorry about that. Hi, Jill. Thanks, Chancellor, for that introduction. I'm honored to be asked to speak today about my professional journey and the opportunities and challenges that I have faced. As you've heard, I am the CEO and Director of Scientific Affairs at the Cancer Research Institute. CRI is a public charity that raises funds philanthropically to support cancer immunology research all around the world. I've been honored to be at the Cancer Research Institute for 34 years. So this will be part of my journey in seeing how I got here. Now, when I was attending college and even in graduate school, this is never where I thought I would end up being. I was the first person in my family to attend college. I was interested in science, and that was certainly a foreign topic to my mother and my grandmother, who were homemakers, to my father, who worked in construction, and my grandfather, who was a milkman. So I had no role models when it came to navigating college or a career path in science. So I was really pretty much on my own. But as I look back, obviously, in addition to a loving, nurturing, and very supporting family that encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do, I think the major influence on my life and my career is probably the fact that I attended an all-girls Catholic school from kindergarten through high school. Now, that experience not only prepared me academically for college and graduate school, but it instilled in me some core values, ethics, and a belief in myself. And that has certainly served me very well. And if you take home nothing else from my comments today, I think you try to remember these things that I think have influenced my entire career, is to always try to do the right thing and treat others as you want to be treated, to speak your mind, but also to listen, to be honest and fair, have confidence in yourself, which I think is really, really important, and of course, work hard. Now, I came out of high school believing in my individuality and my ability and gifts. And I always expected to be valued for my work and my accomplishments. And I also thought, again, that I came out and I felt, I could do anything I wanted to do professionally. The world was open to me, and there were no barriers to my desires, I'd say. So I was very ambitious. I still am ambitious, and I think competitive, and that probably has helped along the way. So I became a chemistry major. And back then, this is in the early 70s, after like my first introductory chemistry class as a freshman in college, I was usually the only woman in all of my scientific classes. But again, that I never had that bother me. I never felt inferior. I think partly going back to my upbringing in an all-girls school, I never had to compete with men before, and I felt I was competent to do anything anyone else did. So I worked hard, got good grades, and I think received the respect of my fellow classmates and my professors. So I went on to get a PhD in cell biology. And again, I think it's that always striving to be the best you can be, and always looking also for opportunities outside the classroom. I think that has had a major impact. Always, and again, I feel like I was very much promoting myself. I really didn't feel I had many true mentors at that time. There were not many women in my position before me. But I think, no one opened doors for me, but you could still find things to do. And I think those, the internships I found and those summer jobs working in labs, all this real life experience really helped to elevate me and set me apart when it came time to look for graduate schools or going on into to the workplace. So how did a chemistry trained cell biologist become the head of a public charity? Well, again, life takes unexpected turns. And I think as well as we all lay out plans of where we think we're going to be, they don't always turn out the way you want. And I think this is another big point to remember for anyone's career, is that you need to be open to change, and you need to seize opportunities when they come before you, and you need to take risks. So after getting my PhD, I went on to do a postdoctoral fellowship at Rockefeller University. And then I got a junior faculty position at Weill Cornell Medical College. And at that point, I had 2 children. So then again, for women, and I think this is still true today as it was back in the 80s, it's a decision point. I think the raising of children and the home family life still falls more heavily on women than it does men, even if you have a very supportive husband, which I did have. But I was brought up in those women libs generation. We were told we could have it all. You could do everything. You could have a career and family. And that all sounds good and well, but it's not always easy. I had, as I said, 2 children under the age of 3. I was working in a laboratory and feeling guilty when I left the lab before 7 o'clock to get home to my babies. And I started thinking, could I really continue on the career trajectory that I felt I was trained for, which was to kind of stay in academia, stay as a bench scientist. My next step was a tenure-track assistant professorship. And could I really be competitive and also do right by my children? So I made a choice and I took a leap of faith. Again, I left bench scientists, again, something I never thought I would do. And I took a job as the director of public information at the Cancer Research Institute. I was no longer going to be doing science. I mean, I got the job because I was a scientist, but it was translating kind of the science that the Cancer Research Institute funded, so it was understandable to the public and the media. And it required me to do a lot of communications and a lot of writing. And here again, in hindsight, I was a science major. I never bothered with English. I took my freshman writing word courses as a freshman, never took another English course in my life. And here I was having to do this. So that was another, things to think about, that you don't really plan ahead. But even at this point, how did I ever become CEO? And this, again, was something that really wasn't on my radar screen. I never anticipated when I joined CRI that I would ever be the head of the organization. I never thought I'd stay at the organization for more than 3 decades. But again, I think this is where a tip in terms of professional development is that you can't box yourself in. Don't just do the minimal amount required for whatever job you have. Do more. Raise your hand. Volunteer. Get out of your comfort zone. Ask to take on more. Look for opening opportunities and step up. And I think if you work hard, you do your best, and doors do open up and you get recognized. I will close really by saying that probably unlike many women that you may be hearing throughout these 2 days of this conference, I never felt marginalized. I never felt discriminated against. I was in a very male-dominated field. And I always felt that though I was basically recognized and treated as an equal to all of my male colleagues. I was never overlooked. I worked hard and I was recognized for what I did and who I was, and I succeeded. And perhaps I was one of the lucky ones. But I believe today in 2021, the opportunities for women are unbelievably wide and probably larger than they ever were for me. So my best advice is really grab them, jump in with 2 feet, but set the bar high for yourself. And again, you can tell from my talk, it's a very self-motivated talk. I didn't rely on other people, I relied on myself. And I think if you have a real belief and a confidence in yourself, and again, I'm going to go back to working hard. I think working hard really makes a difference. And I think if you do a good job, you get rewarded. And I think that's the best advice I could give to anyone in any part, from college students right through to people in the working world and wanting to move up and become leaders. And that's my best advice. So thank you very much. It was really a pleasure to speak to you. I'm not sure I gave any real words of wisdom. I'm not sure I really helped anybody, but that's my story and my viewpoint. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Jill O'Donnell Tormey, for those inspiring words. And I think you did help. You talked about believing in yourself, about striving to be your best, about facing challenges head on, right? And going along with change in your career, which is inevitable, which is a difficult thing to do. And it kind of mirrors what I said in the comments from last year, which is don't let self-doubt creep in, that so many of us, particularly women, let the doubt come in and we need to forget about it and just let it go, because you are a phenomenal woman. So thank you very much for your comments. I'm Andrea Shapiro Davis. I am Interim Vice Chancellor for University Advancement, and I'm delighted to be here today. I am the first college graduate in my family. I went to Queens College, yay. And my mother graduated from Queens College 5 years after I did. So my family is a true CUNY story. So I would be remiss if I didn't start by thanking a few people. The Chancellor thanked all of them, but I just want to reiterate, thank you to Dolly Martinez, who has been an advocate for women for many, many years and who came up with the idea of this event. And I also just want to take a minute to thank my team, Naisha Howell and Stephanie Grace Oros, for their help in preparing me, because Lord knows I needed help. So I am here today to welcome my friend Meera Joshi. Meera lives in Brooklyn with her family, and her son is a student at BMCC. She's a lawyer by training, but as you look at her career, I think you'll find it really interesting that she has been in a male-dominated field for a long time. As a matter of fact, she ran the Taxi and Limousine Commission in New York City, which I think we'd all agree is a pretty male-dominated field. And right now, she works for Pete Buttigieg, who is the Secretary of Transportation for the United States. And as the Chancellor mentioned, she was just appointed by President Biden to serve as a deputy in charge of the trucking industry in the United States. Male-dominated? You bet. Can someone handle that type of program? You bet. And that's my friend, Meera Joshi. So Meera, please come on and say hi. And thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate you and your help and your friendship. And I should say that Meera and I met during Mayor Bloomberg's administration. And as people will hear later in my networking comments, this is all about networking. And I'm honored to have met her and have had her as a friend for many, many years. Meera, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you, CUNY, for creating a platform for all of us to come together. And I learned so much from listening to everybody else's talks about their journey. And my only hope is that I can share some insight as I talk about my journey and lessons I've learned. And I think the one thing I want to point out is we're all individuals. So each of our journeys are real. They're real life decisions and real life events and very individual. And that's what makes it interesting. And that's what also makes it difficult. But I'll start out a little bit by just sort of talking about sort of my life as a lawyer and my life as a leader. And since the focus of this event is on leadership, I want to talk a little bit about that transition as well.
I'm originally from West Philadelphia, grew up in Philadelphia, educated in Philadelphia public schools, went to Temple University, had the good fortune of having a father that worked at University of Pennsylvania. So I took advantage of tuition remission that's so generous there and was able to finish my undergraduate at University of Pennsylvania and law school at University of Pennsylvania, and then found myself with job offers from New York law firms, which seemed completely out of my realm. And I'll fast forward a little bit, but by the September, soon after graduating law school, I found myself in New York with my first husband, and this is a women's event, so we can talk about first husbands and second husbands and single parenting and all those good topics. With my first husband, 5 months pregnant as a junior starting associate at a large law firm. And talk about imposter syndrome. I certainly felt like I was not in the right place. I was having a difficult time at home. I hadn't told anyone I was pregnant. And I was starting in a high-powered law firm in Midtown Manhattan, coming from Philadelphia, and felt completely overwhelmed. And I think that process of just sort of every day showing up and finally admitting to people that I worked with and people I reported to that I was pregnant was a very difficult but eye-opening experience. The first reaction was sort of anger, like, how could you do this? As though I had committed a fraud on the law firm to show up and announce that I was pregnant and ask for maternity leave. But that was the case. So after 5 months, I'm sorry, I think I was 3 months pregnant, so that would have been a very long pregnancy. I did take the maternity leave. And I ended up coming back to the law firm after maternity leave on an abbreviated schedule because I had a young baby. And I was in the process of marriage dissolution. So I was primarily a single parent at that point. So I worked 3 days a week. And that was an agreement they were okay with at the beginning. But at some point they came to me and said, you're not going to be able to move up if you can't commit to working full time. You have to make a decision. And I knew that I didn't really have a decision to make because I had an obligation to my son and I needed to be there as a full-time parent, and full-time work at a law firm was not going to allow me to do that. So I looked for another position at another law firm, and I was fortunate to find a position in a law firm that focused on white-collar criminal defense, an area I found a lot of interest in. And I struck a deal with them. I would work full-time, which meant 9 to 5, 5 days a week, but I would take a pay cut because most people work more than 9 to 5, 5 days a week in return for being able to sort of clock out at 5 o'clock so I could get home and take care of my son. I would take a pay cut. It's funny now because it's not a pay cut anyone should take, but at the time it seemed like a really good deal that I would be allowed to sort of leave at normal time to pick him up from school and make dinner. And so I juggled that and didn't always work out perfectly. And it had a lot of moments where I was certainly struggling to try to be in both places at once. And again, I got to that sort of crossroads where it was, well, if your career is going to continue, you're going to need to commit more time to this effort of being at work and having the face time and the presence at the law firm. And again, I realized that I needed to make a decision. What was more important to me? And to me, it was raising my child. But I really didn't feel that needed to sacrifice. I needed to sacrifice professionally. I felt confident that I still had more to give. I just needed to find the right outlet for it. That ended up in a job search where I landed as a New York City government employee. And my first job in government public service was with the Department of Investigations as a Deputy Inspector General, investigating corruption and criminality that happens at Rikers Island. And that's what I call my transition to leadership.
And there was nothing graceful about this. And I share it because it tends to be sort of real life. You find yourself in these positions, you have to think quickly, you want to make the transition, and you've got to make sure you put your best foot forward in the moment. So I was in a bit of a catch-22. I'm interviewing for the position of a Deputy Inspector General with the Department of Investigation. The commissioner at the time is the one leading the interview. Everything's going really, really well until she asked me, so this is an office that has 25 investigators. How would you approach managing them? And what's your experience in management? And all of a sudden I realized I didn't have any direct reports. I was coming from a junior associate at a law firm position, which isn't exactly the pinnacle of power. So I thought quickly and I was able to come up with a response, and I detailed how I'd worked with paralegals and how I'd worked with interns and how I had to direct their workflow to make sure that the product resulted in a final product that the law firm could stand behind. And luckily that was enough to get me in the door. And what I want to point out is there are these moments as you make the shift to leadership where you're caught in that catch-22. You don't have the exact fitting experience, but you kind of need to talk about it in order to get to the next level. So think creatively about your background. You may not have a management title now, but you do manage things in life and in your workplace. And make sure you draw on those analogies and showcase them so you can get the opportunities to move up the management ladder. And from that position of leading 25 people, I went on to become the IG of that department and led a much larger group. I went from there to the Civilian Complaint Review Board and led a group of 200. I went from there to the Taxi and Limousine Commission and led a group of 600. And now I'm at the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, where I lead a group of 1,200. So it really has a domino effect. You step up, you step up, you step up, but getting in the door the first time is really, really key. One thing I want to talk about is, and I think, you know, all of the speakers have mentioned this, is being open to change. So once I got into New York City government, I spent the first several years working, basically investigating corruption on Rikers Island, which is a completely male-dominated environment, to investigating the New York City Police Department, again, primarily male dominated. And one day I get a telephone call from Andrea Shapiro Davis. Now I had an occasion to meet Andrea Shapiro Davis previously in my role as with the Department of Investigation. One of our cases had involved interviewing Andrea, not as a subject, only as a witness, about appointments that were made in the prior administration. And luckily for me, I had made an impression on Andrea during that interview. And so a moment came when she, still head of appointments, was looking for a general counsel for the Taxi and Limousine Commission and thought of me. So she called me and I was a little shocked. I said, you know, I've had this background in criminal justice. I don't take taxis. I know nothing about transportation. But Andrea gave me the confidence I needed. Andrea said, you'll be fine. It's about how you think and you'll do really, really well. You should go for it. And so I did. And I became the general counsel at the Taxi and Limousine Commission and got steeped in the world of transportation, a place I never imagined I would enter, because my focus had always been around law and criminal justice. And what I found, to my amazement, is that there was a lot of similarities, a lot of the things that I really enjoyed about government that I was able to bring into the world of transportation and find issues to work on, centering basically on how to make people's lives better. So I was able to be the general counsel there for 2 years. The mayors switched. The new mayor, Mayor de Blasio, announced that one of the first things he would do was get rid of the current commissioner. Me being the general counsel, figured I need to exit pretty quickly because I'll be next in line to be asked to go. And then another surprise, which you have to be open to, is I got a call from the new administration. Would I like to be the head of the agency, which I accepted. And I thoroughly enjoyed leading that agency for 5 years, making a real difference in some policy areas that have now become national and international standards. But what I'd like to do is really talk about some of the things I've learned along the way, which hopefully you'll find helpful. So the first one I want to talk about is excitement. We spend so much time at work. Now, maybe we spend it on our laptops, but we're still, sequestered away from our family. You have to be excited about what you do, and you will flourish leading people when you are excited. So you might find yourself in a position where somebody offers you a fancy title, a large office, lots of power, a swivel chair, but it's in an area that just doesn't excite you. Say it's in insurance. No matter how much you're offered, if you don't love the subject matter, you're not going to be able to lead effectively. It'll show in the way you lead. So really get in touch with what excites you and follow that, because that will take you to the greatest leadership ability. Forget the titles, forget the acronyms, just figure out what you like doing. I really liked investigating. I like problem solving. I like urban problems. I like people problems. I like negotiating. I like persuading. Those that work with me closely say I like persuading a little too much. And I get to use all of these skills now in the sort of wild and ever-changing world of transportation, especially in the trucking industry, one of the nation's biggest employers, a huge impact in moving freight during COVID times, and also one of the areas that's going to be first to be disrupted with automation. So I get to use all of those skills. So that's what really drew me to my, the position that I have now, and makes me really grateful that I can utilize these skills again. Another area that I think people have spoken about is self-doubt, right? Don't let self-doubt get to you. Don't let the imposter syndrome get to you. And the biggest leverage you have in combating that is around decision-making. So decision-making is the hardest thing you're going to be asked to do as you move up. The higher up you go, the bigger the decisions are, the more impact they're going to have on more people. And if you have a conscience, the more you're going to care about how you make those decisions. Very, very early on, when I became a manager in city government, I was told by a very wise person, brave people make decisions and weak people don't. They put them off. I thought it was an exaggeration at the time. I've come to learn it is one of the truest things one of the most important truisms of management. It is very difficult to make decisions. So I want to give you a few words of advice. One, it takes practice. Keep exercising that muscle. The more you exercise the muscle, the better you will be at it. Two, make sure you do your due diligence. Listen to all the viewpoints on the issue. Make sure you're committed to hearing voices that you don't normally hear, so seek them out. Surround yourself, if possible, with wise advisors, and give yourself a time frame, because you can't sit in the reflection period forever. You have to come to a decision. And once you come to that decision, remember, you took all the right steps to get there. No decision is perfect, but you made the best decision possible. Be confident about it, and be publicly confident about it. People will criticize you. There will never be a decision without criticism. So you need to be prepared to withstand that, and make sure that in your due diligence, you've already thought about the criticism that you would get and you've addressed it. So be confident, Continue to make decisions and know that it will get easier over time. And as it gets easier, people will give you the authority to make bigger and bigger decisions because they will see that you are effectively able to make change. Another thing I think is really, really important is have a set of values. Now that might seem really obvious, but as you move higher up, and you get more complex decision-making issues before you, as you get a more complex group of stakeholders that are asking you to think of lots and lots of considerations, you're going to need your own North Star to guide you through all of that noise. So you need a good set of values, you need a strong moral code, and you need to stick with it. The flurry of the noise that you hear as you lead, as you go up that leadership ladder is going to get louder and louder. So you need to be able to stick by your values. You need to make sure that the people working with you and you encourage them to stick by their values too. And the thing about it is you will be able to lead with good conscience. You'll be able to lead in politically fraught environments. You'll be able to sleep well at night because you know what your motivation is. And one of the best benefits is you will be a model for others. There is at times, we're in a different political era now than we were maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But there are times in life where people stop having faith in government, in leadership, in good governance, and representing that through leading and sticking to a core moral code gives people hope and inspiration to follow in your footsteps. And we always need to be thinking about the next generation of women leaders and making sure they see a path forward. One final item I want to raise, well, not final, next to final item I want to raise that I find really, really difficult. Networking helps me practice this in ways that I probably wouldn't, is make sure you pump yourself. So I always feel like I shouldn't have to talk about my accomplishments. People should know about them and recognize them. And they should just come to me and say, we know you've done this, Mira, so we're going to give you this next great task. But the truth is, they're not. And it's not even out of ill will. And it's because we're all busy. And so we're all know what we're on is on our agenda, but we're not always conscious about what other people have achieved. And so in a busy world filled with all kinds of social media inputs, we need to make sure we pump ourselves up. And we can do it in a way that's not brash and abrasive. We can do it in a way that's proud and humble, but still out there. Make sure you are out there and people know what you have accomplished. That can be through social media. That can be through Medium. That can be through doing presentations. That can be through networking. But find those opportunities and do not feel guilty for pumping yourself up, because you deserve to be in that room. You need to be in that room. And we're all really, really grateful for all of the wise women that are in the rooms and making sure that their voices are heard. We're a better society for it. One of the things I want to close on is what I call myth busting. One of the items that I think I've dealt with a lot is sort of this dichotomy between what does working hard look like. When I worked in a law firm, working hard was your face is present in that office, long hours, you're doing FaceTime, you're proving to others that you're working hard because you're there. As a woman, as a mother, that is extremely difficult because every moment you're there, especially in the later hours, you're neglecting your children. You're neglecting your home duties. You're not able to be there in a way that you would like to be there for your children. But what I call myth busting is there is a myth out there that is the way that you work and you get ahead and that you are effective. And I've come to learn that that's actually not true. And so I ran an agency that was entirely effective, passed cutting edge policy that is a model for other cities internationally, a model for many cities nationally, elevated the careers of those that worked for me. And we never, ever, ever had a culture where working long hours made us better. In fact, having balance made us better. Having balance allowed us to be focused and efficient while at work and respectful of the health and welfare of all of our fellow workers. Making sure people went home at a decent hour, making sure people didn't work on weekends, making sure there was some humor in some of the most difficult meetings we had, making sure that when someone had a sick child, they were not in the office and they were at home. That was most important to me, to make sure I led that way and that I was modeling for the future leaders. And the best part was we proved all those people that say you need to be in the office working frenetically and have face time and ignoring your family duties in order to be effective, we proved that that was wrong. And I really, really just want to emphasize how much I think this is an important point. There's a point where we can define what effective work is. Effective work is having balance, and that doesn't take away from your ability to achieve. And I really, really urge everyone in leadership, rising up in leadership, model that behavior for those that come after you. It's really important as we come out of COVID. There was an article that struck me. I can't even remember what paper it was in, but it said we have to be really conscious because as we come back from teleworking, there may be disparities between women and men. Women have taken on an incredible burden during COVID with home responsibilities, childcare responsibilities, and maintaining work responsibilities. As offices open back up, many men may find it a lot easier and welcome the opportunity to get back in the office and again, show their leaders that they're physically there, show that face time again. And many women may want to do that, but they're actually still working out childcare and actually finding that telework allows them to achieve a greater home work balance that they don't want to give up. So we need to be conscious that as we come back to the office, not everybody's ability to come back to the office is going to be the same. And women may not have the same ability to come back to the office as men. And let that not be a point. Let us not hold that against the women that have a harder time coming back. And I really think that for women with smaller children, that is really going to be a hurdle. So it is, again, the point I made earlier about FaceTime. That in and of itself doesn't define success. It's focus, it's efficiency, it's smarts, and that should not be defined by gender. So I really, really is excited that this event is happening. I hope that I've been able to share some tips that you find useful. And I really want to watch everybody's career flourish and achieve that balance where you have personal and professional success, because you can have it all in a definition where we decide what all means, not prior historical definitions, which have us sacrificing and burning the candle at both ends. So thank you so much, Andrea, for inviting me. Thank you, CUNY, for providing this platform, and best wishes to everybody on their amazing career trajectories.
Yay, Mira. Can you guys see why I invited my friend Mira to speak today? I'm thinking about this. I know politics shouldn't come into the program here, but I'm thinking Mira for mayor, or if Pete Buttigieg becomes president down the road, like Vice President Mira Joshi. Mira, thanks so much for your comments. I think a lot of them resonated with the people who are listening to this conference in terms of work-life balance and believing in yourself. And what did you say? We define what we can do, we define what we want to be, and we can define our environment and the challenges that face women coming back. Spot on. I absolutely think that that was a great point to make. And your career trajectory has been extraordinary. I can't wait to see where you go from here. And I'm also very happy that you said that I was not the subject of the investigation when we first met. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love Mira Joshi. She's one of my closest friends. And again, at the end of the journey, I think it's about the people you meet along the way and the friends that you make. And I have come to have an amazing friend in Mira. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up, I would like to introduce Kenya Lee. Kenya is the Chief of Staff to the president at Baruch College and one of the people who coordinated this program. And she will be leading a discussion with three of my favorite colleagues at CUNY, Dean Mary Pearl from Macaulay Honors College, President Berenicia Eanes from York College, and President Claudia Schrader from Kingsborough Community College. So Kenya, I will let you take it from here. Thank you, ladies, and I will see you again later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Andrea, and good morning, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you here today to moderate this fireside chat with just a few of CUNY's esteemed leaders, and they've been introduced, but I'm going to take a few moments just to sing some of their praises very briefly. So just to give you some parameters for this piece of the conversation, it'll be guided by a set of questions that are going to touch on professional journeys, leadership, and leadership development. And we did receive a few questions from some of our audience members, and I'll try to integrate those into the conversation where possible. So right now, I'll just take a few moments just to briefly give you some highlights from the bios of today's panelists. So we'll start with Benicia Johnson-Ames, who serves as the president of York College. Prior to her current role, President Ames served for 7 years as Vice President for Student Affairs at California State University, Fullerton. Prior to that, President Ames served for 6 years as the Vice President for Student Affairs at John Jay College. She currently also represents the college at for the Council of State Representative of the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, and co-chair of the JFKR Advisory Council Education Committee. And that's just to name a few of her many council affiliations. So welcome, President Ames. We also have with us today Dean Mary Pearl, who is the Dean of the Macaulay Honors College. Dean Pearl is a scientist, environmentalist, and educator who served as the first Dean and Administrative Vice President of Stony Brook University, Southampton. Before coming to Macaulay Honors College, she was CEO of the Garrison Institute, a research and retreat center. As a long-serving president of the EcoHealth Alliance, Dean Pearl helped build careers of local scientists and educators around the world. And Newsweek magazine has described Dean Pearl as a leading biologist who has spearheaded the development of conservation medicine. Welcome, Dean Pearl. And our third leader joining us today is Claudia Schrader, president of the Kingsborough Community College. She is the college's 7th president and holds the distinction of being the first African-American in the college's history to hold that office. Prior to becoming a president at Kingsborough, President Schrader served as provost and senior vice president at Bronx Community College. She also served as associate provost at William Patterson University of New Jersey and as associate provost at Medgar Evers College, where she held a faculty rank tenure. Most notably, within her first year as president, President Schrader secured a $1 million donation from the Leonard and Louise Riggio. They're the founders of Barnes & Noble for student scholarships. And this remains as one of the largest gifts that the college received to date. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us today and for taking this opportunity out of what I know is a very busy schedule to share some of your insight and your experiences. So I want to jump into things with the first question. The past year has been one of many challenges and uncertainty. And it's really been a test of crisis leadership. What have been your greatest lessons learned during this past year during the pandemic?
Well, I'll start. For me, it's been a triple crisis. And I think the largest and most impactful crisis has been the long-term structural racism in American institutions. And this was the year that we could finally act on this crisis. As institutions, I think the opportunity presented itself because the Black Lives Matter movement provided the impetus and leveraged broad willingness on the part of a large population to commit to change. And so that provided an opportunity to really step into it. And I think the second crisis obviously was COVID-19 and its profound impact on health, morale, and education delivery. And this was an opportunity to build our online counseling and resilience training, which I think we will continue to have, to figure out ways to build and maintain community virtually, and to improve our ability to deliver effective classes online. We would have eventually gotten to it, but this turbocharged it. And then I think the third crisis has been the devastating economic effect on people's lives, families, the city, and the state financial shortfalls. And it's kind of hard to find the silver lining there, but it did give us cover to get everyone to be less defensive about budgeting, at least in our institution, and more willing to start with a generosity of focusing on what is essential.
Thank you, Dean Pearl.
Right. I'll go next. Hi, Mary. Hi, Berenice. Good to see my sister presidents on the line. I would say that the lessons learned during this crisis, I think that's the question you asked about lessons learned. The first lesson is self-care. I realized early on that I had to take care of myself, and without that, I couldn't take care of what I needed to do for Kingsborough Community College. So self-care has really come to the forefront of something that's important for me, and something that I know I tell my staff and I reiterate to the community about just taking time and taking care of themselves, especially in this very stressful environment. I would say the second lesson is one of communication. Again, very early on, informing people about what was happening, although it was a very ever-changing environment. Communication was key, not to keep people in the dark. That builds anxiety. And when I knew something, they would know something. And I think in crises situations, it's very important to have a solid communication plan. So whether that's even picking up the phone and having meetings, Zoom meetings, emails, communication is very key at a time of crisis. Third lesson, to be flexible, nimble, adaptable. During a crisis, things change all the time. Sometimes it doesn't change at all. And it's really important to be able to adapt to new situations and confront situations very easily. So I think being adaptable was a great lesson that I learned. And finally, being inclusive. I think during times of crisis, we tend to have a core team. For us as presidents, it's a senior leadership team. But during a time of crisis, I think it's really important to expand that team to include all members of your community, to be very inclusive in terms of your problem solving and your thinking through issues. No one should be left out of that process. Faculty, staff, your senior leadership team, it's really important to reach out and figure out who has the skills and the knowledge base to help you during times of crisis. So I would think those are my top 4 lessons.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. Good to see you, Claudia. Good to see you, Mary, and thank you, Kenya. So I won't repeat anything that my sister presidents have said. What I will say is additional to the things they've already mentioned, that I think true engagement. I think during COVID, we've had to challenge ourselves to figure out how we truly engage with each other, with our students, our faculty, and our staff. I think one of the privileges of our previous reality was that things were just more natural, and you have to be much more intentional, right? Very intentional about how you engage with people. So I would say that. Secondly, patience. I think after we realized that we were moving from COVID crisis to COVID maintenance, because basically many of us as higher education leaders, we can do anything for 3 months or 6 weeks or whatever else. But when you look around, it's like, oh, wait, this is not gonna end right now. Developing that sort of patience and helping your team realize that they can make it. They'll be okay. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. That patience and that perseverance, I think, is very important. And then I think the third thing I would say is being able to own your space, be able to own your space in the journey. And I think people have to be very much encouraged and understand that everyone has a role in us being okay through this, and that everything each one of our community members are doing matters. Everything everybody's doing matters. Even in the dawn of the term essential worker, we're all essential. There are people that are more, deemed more essential by the virtue of the structure of what we're going through. But for us to make it, we have to own our reality in a way that's very different. And I think one of the lessons for me as a leader is being able to articulate that back to people and say, you know, you're doing great. This is your space. This is your thing. You're doing a good job at this, what you are being asked to do. Because I think, because we're not together day to day, it's very easy to forget how to appreciate what everyone is doing. And it's easy to get away from that. So that would be what I would share.
Okay, thank you. Now, one of our audience members asked the question, how did you adapt your management or leadership style in reaction to the pandemic, and particularly having to pivot to leading in a remote environment?
I don't know. I'm going for the bone every time, but I would say that I just want to make a comment about Zoom because that's become the reality of our lives. And sometimes I'm on a Zoom, one Zoom after another from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. And man, I'm exhausted. And I've thought about why is it that meeting with your colleagues is energizing in person and so draining in private? And I think the answer is, and let me speak as an evolutionary biologist, we are not adapted to stare and read people's faces on 100%. Essentially, it's exhausting work to do that. You can't help yourself. You're looking at people's faces. You're noticing whether you don't know it, but you're noticing if their irises narrow or widen, if their face muscles tense. And so you're constantly tuning in to one person. But what if it's a whole set, like right here, of a panel, and you're gauging all of this, and you're not getting the chance to take in, I don't know, the energy, the scents, the aromas of the perfumes and the aftershave and the fresh air and all the sensory input that is missing makes it exhausting. And I think to mix it up, sometimes it's good to have a phone call, but I just want to acknowledge that we are doing a lot. It refers to, it's like Berenicia said, that it is, you can do it for 3 months. And then, when it becomes a way of life, I think a lot of people are going to run screaming from Zoom meetings, even as we found them very efficient.
Yeah. I would say for me, I'm naturally, someone who likes to walk around campus and see students and engage with students and feel their energy and hear the issues. So then we could, figure out what's wrong, just connecting. So I had to take all of that to Zoom. We started monthly student town hall meetings just so I can talk to students, just so I can see them, just so we can hear from them. And that was a big switch, because before I can just put on my sneakers and walk down the hall and figure out if there's an issue here or what's going on, or someone tells me something and then it becomes an issue for me to solve. But we had to get that input in other ways. So student town hall meetings, meetings with faculty. I had to figure out how could I best use technology to do what I would do naturally in person. And when that failed, I was out with a mask, still greeting students at the gate, trying to engage as much around campus with the essential workers who were still on campus. So for me, it was just figuring out how do I engage and how do I continue to connect with faculty, students, and staff. I think that's one of the things that Kingsborough is known for. We're very high touch. So to go into an environment where we can't touch students anymore was a very difficult thing.
I have to say, President Schrader, I follow you on LinkedIn, and I've always watched your videos, how you throw on the sneakers, you get in the SUV and you go out and you meet and greet your potential new students. And that is beyond high touch. That's absolutely amazing. And I think that's one of the things that I found encouraging through all of this, how you've managed to really maintain that personal touch throughout all this chaos that's been swirling around us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I don't want to echo those comments. I think they touched on all the things. I think being a flexible leader, being able to pivot on a daily basis is what COVID really made us do. Because what you had to do Monday, on Wednesday, well, that's not gonna work anymore. Got to do something else. On Friday, it's like, oh, that's not gonna work. Let's change again. I think that being able to be flexible and being able to help others pivot and see that change is uncomfortable, but it's necessary, and that technology is necessary. And then also just, I will be honest with you, I'm a social worker by training. Many people know that my walk to this life was non-traditional. I have an MSW and a PhD in social work. I'm very grateful for that training, because the amount of grief that we have had to deal with is monumental. And I'm very grateful that I have a community that understands that we have to meet that and go through it and acknowledge that. And so I think for me, being able to utilize understanding of grief, right, and recovery is what has been the most powerful for me during COVID.
I think my colleagues have mentioned the flexibility, and I think that a tolerance for ambiguity, the ability to pivot is a key attribute of a leader, and not everyone can do it. And I think helping people who really use certainty as a life preserver, one has to have compassion, but it's an opportunity for people to learn that they can live with a little ambiguity, but that's a challenge.
So I guess one of the things I wanted to touch on was, I guess, how can today's leaders prepare to lead into a future that really is complex, uncertain, and ambiguous? And you've kind of touched on that, whereas we have to really just master the art of the pivot. And I like what you said, Dean Pearl, about the tolerance for ambiguity, because certainty is no longer something that we can cling to.
Not at all. And I think there's also, we have complex problems. And there was a social critic in the last century, his name was H.L. Mencken, and he wrote many years ago, for every complex problem, there is an answer that is simple, clear, and wrong. and I think that we have to recognize that, as one of my colleagues said, you have to give yourself permission to lead and make decisions, or maybe that was a speaker in the earlier panel. But problems are daunting, and they're no magicians, just people like us. So you have to build a diverse council of advisors and listen to them. And that's how you tackle complex problems. And you have to model optimism throughout, because I think that's another trait, along with tolerance for ambiguity, is unsinkable optimism that is based in reality, to make sure people can feel motivated and secure, that maybe not all the plans are nailed down, but we're going in the right direction. And if she's not alarmed, then I shouldn't be,
Thank you. So I want to switch gears just a bit and touch on, at this point, I think all three of you consider yourselves veterans after this last year. But you're relatively, I guess, also new to institutional leadership as the CEOs. So what exactly inspired you to go after the deanship or the college presidency?
I'll let Mary off the hook this time. I have to say that maybe becoming a president it has always been somewhere in my consciousness. I can't say that it's always been in the forefront of my consciousness. It was there. I think what I aspired to be was in a role, in a position that will bring me personal fulfillment, where I could help, where I can make a difference, and where I can work with people. This right now just happens to be a presidency. When the opportunity presented itself, and it did before, many people told me, you should think about Kingsborough. And I was like, no, not really. Until the last person told me, and I listened to them. But it wasn't that I was actually actively pursuing presidencies. The door opened. It opened with a job description that when I looked at it, I was like, I can do this. I think it just happened to be one of a presidency. It wasn't until maybe my second interview really dawned on me, like, this is the president of an institution. But it wasn't at the forefront of my consciousness. It was there. I think what I spent my time all these years doing in higher ed and all the other jobs that I had, because it really prepared me for this one. Berenice spoke about her background in social work, really preparing her for this time. Well, who would have known a background in journalism would prepare me to write multiple emails on a daily basis. I could probably write a whole encyclopedia work of emails right now, but every job I had prepared me for this one. Every project I took on, every new responsibility, everything I did in all my jobs really prepared me for the one that I have now. So I think I was more focused on doing the work as Senior Vice President and Provost at Bronx Community College. And I was ready to assume a presidency, but it wasn't like, this is what I want to go to. The door opened, I was ready, and I was able to walk through and be accepted.
Here, I'll let you off the hook one more time. We'll switch the order. I think, quite honestly, I agree that every experience sets you up for the next one. I did not get interested in being a president until I actually was in the company of other presidents. So when you work mid-level jobs in higher education for years, you really don't have as many opportunities to be around the president. When you become the vice president, that's very different, right? You work for the president. And so I think, just then was the beginning of my being like, oh, like this, I think could be very interesting, but it could be impactful. Like, I like to have high impact situations in my life. Like, I want to see I'm doing something and I can see the outcome, like the direct outcome. So for me, I was like, this is just another level of having impact for the students. I fell in love with higher ed years ago. So that was without a question going to be where I was going to be working. But I think the next thing, just sort of defining the level of impact you want to have. And also most recently, more than anything, I have shared with many of my students, when they ask me, so what is your stance on, social justice, and what is your stance on Black Lives Matter and all the things that are going on. And I remind them all the time, when I get up every day and go to work, I'm already making a statement of social justice by itself, because nobody intended for anybody that looks like me to be a college president. Bottom line. Mm-hmm. So for me, for my grandmother who picked cotton, I'm good. I'm gonna get up and do this because that's a big deal. And it's, on many levels, not because I'm a big deal. It's a big deal for my community and for the work that we've always been doing. So that's sort of how it evolved.
Well, for me, this is actually my second college leadership position. I've been running a research institute for many years. And a headhunter just called me one day and said, Stony Brook University was looking for a leading environmental scientist to become the founding dean of their new College of Sustainability. And I had a background as an administrator of a nonprofit institution. I had a science background as a conservation biologist, and I had an academic background because I was an adjunct senior scientist at Columbia with some research projects. So I thought it was a perfect fit. And after spending over a decade at my research institute job, I thought, I'll try something new. And Stony Brook agreed and they hired me. And I love the job, from contact with students to all the minutia. I love even the workarounds to get a goal achieved in a big bureaucracy. And the mission of public higher education is a mission that is worthy of spending your time doing. So that was why I became I came bitten by the bug of higher education, but it's funny, I sort of came in at the top.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that basically there wasn't a straight path, but at times it was meandering, and it was just something that this came across your path as an opportunity. So when we're talking about leadership journeys and some of the opportunities that have come across your path, I'm sure there've also been times where as you've hit roadblocks or barriers. Can you speak to some of the barriers or roadblocks that you've experienced during your professional journeys? And how did you overcome them?
I'll go first. You want to go, Berenice? You should? Okay. I would say I've had two that I can think of. I did have a supervisor at one point who was a woman. That was a difficult relationship. Really made me question my place in higher education, but eventually worked itself out. I would say the second roadblock, surprisingly, is myself, right? Because we tend, I think, sometimes as women to have imposter syndrome. Maybe that's part of the reason why a presidency wasn't in the forefront of my consciousness, because I was like, who, me? That's not for me. I'm not ready yet. And sometimes, and I think this is where like mentorship and just doing the best job you can do for doing its sake. Sometimes there are people looking at you who see more for you than you even see for yourself. And you could be your worst enemy in terms of talking yourself out of things or thinking that you're not ready. And indeed, you are ready. So I would say that maybe my number one roadblock would have been myself. I could have probably applied for this position months before I actually did if I had listened to the first person and really did some self-reflecting. But I guess I just wasn't ready to hear it for myself. So I think at times you could be your own roadblock. And I know I certainly have been in my own instance, my own.
Yeah, I'm a little older, and so I was raised in a middle-class family that had no career aspirations for me whatsoever. And in fact, they were concerned that my enthusiasm for school made me too nerdy to be good at finding a husband, seriously. But luckily, I found a fellow nerd in graduate school, and we married and raised a family together, even as we collaborated on our research and writing. But I think, as I'm listening to all of us and how well prepared we were for our jobs, I think that men, and especially white men, get offered stretch jobs. Oh, they've done well at this little job. Throw them into the deep end of the pool. Whereas we're all like dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and people are saying, why haven't you been head of something? You can more than do it. And that's sort of the self roadblock. And then another block I had was actually when I was interviewing for the Stony Brook job. I was simultaneously being treated for an aggressive breast cancer. And I just wasn't going to let cancer stop me. I put on my wig and I went and did all the interviews and left that behind.
So I will say that all of those that my sister presidents mentioned, all of those apply, other than, of course, Mary's heroic challenge with cancer to myself. But what I will say is, I think that the roadblocks, other than the cell phone, which I think is big, we cannot hit on that enough. I think there also is this repeat situation where thinking outside the box and being bold and being heroic in your ideas about the work has often caused people to be like, well, you can't really change the graduation rate here. You can't really transform this here. I'm like, well, why can't we? But I think I've been in more than one situation where I proposed a change in philosophy, a change in approach, where there has been a huge amount of pushback around, that's just not possible. That can't happen. And for whatever reason, I continue to be put in those situations in my life where, just making philosophical changes and making dynamic, innovative changes in how we serve the students and how we attach ourselves to data-driven decisions and all of that, it very often has been quite an interesting journey. But it's all about the partnership and the relationship. So I think the other piece is just going back and figuring out how to make those relationships and partnerships to get that going. I think that that's been an uphill battle, and it's very difficult once you decide you want to do a certain thing, have a certain level of output for the students on a campus. No matter what your role is. I mean, an inner role. I can go all the way back to my days in Trio, where I was, being asked to do that for just a certain group of students. No matter what, it's like just figuring out how to gain partnership and help people feel comfortable with a change of approach, right? I think that's where I've had the strongest resistance probably in my work.
Thank you. I want to circle back to something that President Schrader touched on a bit in her comments. You spoke a bit about mentorship in your experiences. So to that point, can you talk a bit about your experiences with being a mentor or being mentored during your professional journeys? What role did mentorship play in your professional lives?
Okay, I'm ready. So when we started this session, I wrote a note at the top of my paper. It said, ask for help. And so there's this very interesting self-reflection that I think that everybody can do around their cultural experience, their family experience, their education experience, and their style of asking for help. I happen to have been raised in a very blessed situation where I witnessed my mother and other women helping each other at a level that you could not imagine all the time. So I didn't have a lot of challenges around asking and receiving. But what I will offer to our participants today, and any woman who wants to be a healthy, successful woman, you got to look at who you are and how well you ask for help and how well you receive help before you actually can go on the journey of having a mentor. Because that at the end of the day, if you can't receive the mentorship and you can't ask for the mentorship, then you won't have the mentorship. I'm very grateful. I've had some great mentors professionally, as a mother. I have a mentor for everything in my life. I have people who help me be a mother, help me be a wife, people who have helped me be the president. I'm like, I don't mind. I ask anybody. I will text you in a minute. Claudia will tell you, I need help. But but it depends on your personality. So I think that's really when I realized I had to look at what were my lessons around asking for help, and then push against that to kind of get what I needed. Then you're in a better place. And I think you do need to understand the power of mentorship, and you have to accept what a mentor is willing to give. There are some people actually on this webinar who understand that because I am a president with 2 teenage children, your mentorship is going to be via text. I love you all, but what you're going to do, you're going to text me, you're going to tell me what's wrong, what you need help with, and I'm going to tell you what, that's all I got right now. Because this is the zone I'm in. There used to be a day I could take you to lunch and take you to dinner. I could talk to you all day. Not right now, because it's just not, that's my capacity. So I think the other thing is we sometimes go looking for a mentor and we want it to be in a certain package. Right. So I also offer to young leaders, just be sure you say to when you say, I would really love for you to be my mentor. Do you have the capacity for that right now? And then if the person says what I just said, if that's not okay, then be like, okay, I'll take that. Let me keep on looking for somebody who can take me to lunch or can come spend the day with me, or I can go shadow. There'll be different spaces, and that doesn't, everybody has, and the only other thing is I would say is, in the world of male privilege that we have lived in as women, you do sometimes need to understand and hear somebody saying, I am going to help you be a president. That's a profound statement. I'm going to help you be a successful, whatever your aspiration is. When somebody says that to you, that's a commitment from them. And you have to, that's exciting. And those people do exist. Please do not, you all don't doubt that. They're out there. Please do not dismay. There are people that if you claim your dream and you say it out loud, they will then say, I am going to help you be that. But you have to say it out loud. And then you have to keep looking for that person that you have the right chemistry with, that has the resources. And it's not always your supervisor. You never know who it's going to be. You really don't. But once you get that, then continue to be able to ask. Asking for help is something that we really, I think there's a whole pedagogy to it. And there are some cultural challenges for many of us around that. So I hope I didn't go on too long, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. All right. I guess I have seconds. I've had many incredible mentors, continue to have them. And maybe this is how I know the difference, because they're still here, they're lifelong. I don't necessarily call them only when I want something. Maybe I'm calling to give something, because mentorship is a two-way street. It's not all about what could you do for me? You know, I want to get here, help me get here. That's not what mentorship is about. It's really about developing somebody as a whole person. And it is a two-way street. I think you also have to give back to your mentors in ways that they may need you, right? They may need an ear, and it's okay to call them and just sort of check in and make sure that they're okay. Maybe they need some words of advice from you. I really firmly believe that. I would say that the second and important piece is that, especially in this position as a president, lots of responsibility. The only thing I don't have a lot of is time, right? So to Berenicia's point, this idea of let's go to eat and have multiple conversations, that's like maybe the old way of doing mentorship. For me, it's like, call me up, text, what do you need? How can we help? How can we work through? How can we problem solve together to get you where you want to go? Or what, solve this problem that you need to have. Mentors do not necessarily need to be somebody above you in rank or position. It can be somebody who is your peer. It can be somebody who is in maybe a lower position, a lesser rank than you are. Mentorship is all, for me, about wisdom and words of advice. And I think a lot of times people look at mentorship as to, oh, this person is a president, they're going to get me to be a vice president. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes we just want to be able to dispense really good advice to help you as a person grow. I think the people who know me well. You need something, you can consider it done, but then you're also including me as part of your reputation. So if you claim me as a mentor, that means that I am part of what you do. It's also my reputation as well. So you have to come and you have to come correct. So that's the first part of it, right? You have a standard to live up to because you're claiming me as your mentor. Berenicia is right. She will text in a heartbeat. In fact, she just texted me with my skinny face. Is that appropriate? Is that appropriate, Berenicia?
It is, because you're part of, you look, okay, I won't start. Go ahead.
and that's because that Berenicia is a mentor, right? If I need something, I know that she's there and she can help. There are parts of my development that I think she's a perfect fit to give me advice, and vice versa. There are parts of things that I know that I'm perfect to give her advice for. And I think it just works that way. I think we are so fortunate to work in this university, because I feel that my sister presidents and my brother presidents are just a phone call away. There hasn't been anyone I have ever called in this university who's a president and say, I need your help in, and them not pick up that phone and support me. And I consider them mentors because a lot of them have served longer than I have, but they have expertise that I don't have. So don't look for that, as Berenice said, that one definition, that one picture of a mentor that you have in your mind, this one expectation of what they are going to do for you. You also have to see, what are you going to do for the relationship, and what are you going to do for yourself as well?
I just like to add to that, and we must acknowledge the fitness of our President Schrader, because it's been one of those silver linings of COVID-19 is vicariously enjoy your road to fitness. That's in the self.
That's the only reason I sent the text about the skinny face. But anyway, go ahead.
So anyway, I just want to say that sometimes you can fertilize your career. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mentor. For example, I have an executive coach. I tell her everything. She looks out for my psyche as well as giving all kinds of advice, because she's a lawyer, MBA. She's a certified public accountant, and she's a great spirit. And I'd say I'd hold her up against any mentor I've had as a different kind of mentor. Also, you're saying how CUNY is a great place to work. It's a real pleasure for me to identify a mid-level staff member and then send that person for leadership nourishment with the many programs that CUNY runs. And that's a great way for junior people rising to create networks within and across the whole CUNY system. And that's another way for advancement. And then I'd also like to mention that one of my mentors was the chairman of the board of a nonprofit I ran, and she showed me effective leadership. She was a group president at Johnson & Johnson, really fancy. She'd been a McKinsey consultant. I never would have had such a fancy mentor, but every year she asked me to outline my personal, professional plan for the year with 8 to 10 top priorities keyed against the institution's strategic plan. It meant we were allies looking at solving problems together. She never told me this is how you should lead, but I learned this is a wonderful way to lead, and that's how I work with my direct reports. So sometimes just observing, hiring someone, and taking advantage of these seminars and programs in leadership development that I went to one called the Center for Creative Leadership. I thought it was accidental that I always ended up as a leader in groups. And then I learned, no, I've got the personality for it. Sometimes you're not born knowing these things, and you can really turbocharge by giving yourself over to these very intensive multi-day programs.
Thank you. I want to switch gears just a little bit. So back in 2017, the American Council on Education did a college president study. And in that study, they noted at that time that only 30% of college presidents were women and only 5% were women of color. How can our institutions do a better job at supporting women leaders who are seeking career advancement? And may it be a senior leadership position as a VP, a dean, or the ultimate, ring, the college presidency?
I said something earlier about offering women, and especially women of color, stretch jobs. Oh, such a good job in this department, Chair. Let's have her leap to the next level. I mean, there's one employee in my organization. When I came in, she was like a scholarship assistant. Now she's in my cabinet, because every time I gave her more to do, she excelled. And so I think there has to be an openness. I think that presidents, we have to say that for our search committees, to say that unless we have a very diverse pool of finalists, we're not going to interview the finalists. That there has to be some accountability and measurement, because that's how we increase the number of women and the number of women of color.
I also think that we can give women, without having opportunities where they might apply for a particular position, if we create projects, special initiatives on our campus that they can take the lead, then they get to develop their skills and build their portfolios. So when there are positions that become available, they have the knowledge and they have the skills to apply and get in there. I think too, having a network within CUNY, so that, there might be someone at your college or Macaulay that is looking to grow externally, and they're looking to come to Kingsborough. I think that's really important to figure out how could we keep our women leaders within CUNY, but also give them opportunities to grow outside of the institutions that they have been at for maybe many years. I think it's not robbery for an institution to, take someone from Kingsborough because they're magnificent. But I think we also have to put them in a position where they're ready to do these things. And I think it also comes with informal conversations. I don't think we talk about the good work that individuals on our campus or even women leaders do all the time. We need to create forums to do so. So-and-so, they're fabulous, they'll do a great job, because that doesn't come through any other way. It doesn't necessarily come through even in a recommendation, but just having these informal networks, these opportunities to talk with each other and with aspiring leaders, I think is really important.
So I would say there's informal and formal ways. In my last situation, because I was in an area where there was 3% African-American, I was one of the only women vice presidents, depending on the time of where the cabinet was, to the huge dismay of my assistant. I would offer shadow days. And so you could sign up for a shadow day. And the instructions were, you must wear your sneakers. You must understand there are meetings that you may be having to step out of because you can't be there. And that you need to keep up with her. And that's just in the most kind way. My assistant would say, like, you want to see what it is like to be a vice president of an institution that serves 40,000 people. This is what's going to happen. You're going to get here at 8:30 and you're going to start and you're going to see what you can do and enjoy watching, stay with her, listen to her, keep notes, whatever. And then she'll have a debrief meeting with you 2 months later after you digest how your day was. So that's a more informal, aggressive. So because again, it's like, okay, there's people that don't get access to see what it's like, the actual job, right? So I think there's things we can do like that. And then there's the formal way, which is to educate people, Kenya, of the data that you just stated. I think that people move away from the understanding of the data, of the reality, that it's not quite happening with the frequency that people may think. And I think just being able to be in spaces and say that out loud and to communicate that, even to highlight the amount of women presidents there are in CUNY, to shout out the fact that we have a chancellor that is a courageous leader that hired all of us women, right? And that's even that, just figuring out a way to communicate that message over and over again. That's the more formal way. But the informal way, I think you have to do both, right? And so shadow days, doing talks, I think we particularly in COVID, we Zoom and do a lot of very official things all day long. And I don't know if Mary and Claudia feel like me. When I'm able to be in a space that's just a little off the path, it is a joy at this point because it's all been so official. So it's really nice to, if you have a women's leadership forum or group on your campus, just so people can ask questions about what it means to have that job, so it feels more accessible, but you also can mirror some of the truth and motivate and say to them, you can do whatever you want to. This may not be it, but you can do anything. So that, I think that's what I think can help.
Just point of clarification that the chancellor did not hire me, but he is the one. He is the one that told me to apply and that I listened to and I applied. So
there we go.
It's him too.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'll close with this question. How do you measure success as a leader?
I'll go further. Listen, graduation day is the best day of the year for me. It always has been doing this over 20 years. If they graduate and they thrive and they're happy, if they're not where they start, if they're not where they are when they started. If we as a group are a stronger team on campus, to me, that's success, because any organization is always growing and it's never perfect. But when you see them thriving and growing and graduating and being the leaders of tomorrow, I don't think you can argue with that. That's success. Now, does it need to be connected to a metric? Yes. Does it need to be measurable and big? Yes. All of that. But what we are trying to do for our communities and for our campuses is profound. And when it's like a church choir or orchestra, when it comes together, it's like magic. When it doesn't, it sounds a little clanky. But it doesn't mean it's not worth the singing or the playing the music. So that's just for me.
Yeah, I would agree with Berenice. Commencement day is like the best day of the year. It's a really good indicator of success. But so is the first day of classes. The team that pulled together to make the college wonderful, to make students want to come there. It's like one of my favorite days of the year. But I would also say that a huge indicator of success is the college faculty and staff, that we're all saying the same things, that we understand what our standards are, what our values are, and we're saying the same things, but yet we're different people, but we're all singing on one accord. We know what our values are, we know what's important, and we all have the same mantra. That's really just being in sync with each other. And again, to Berenice's point, there are measures, right? Satisfaction ratings, retention and all of that. Yes, that matters. But in a way, when you feel it, when you go to a meeting that was maybe contentious for 2 years, and then you walk in one day and people are disagreeing, but we're coming out still on one accord. Those are some things you can't measure. It's just a feeling that you get. There's something that you see. There are people who are stepping up, people who are coming out of the woodwork, faculty and staff wanting to be a part of. Another great measure of success are external organizations and institutions that say, we want into Kingsborough. We want to give you money. We want to partner. We want you to be our partner. That's a very good indicator of success, because we're not only good to ourselves, but other people see how good we are as well. And the best indicator of success are those alumni that write back and just say, you changed my life. You changed my family's life. My daughter goes to the school. That's a great indicator of success, because if what we can do for one student, they can do for their family, then as far as I'm concerned, that's like the epitome of success.
What can I say that hasn't been beautifully said just before, but I just add 2 words. Say, how can you work for CUNY? The salaries are low and the budgets go down, and everyone's always grieving. And I said, it's 2 words. It's access and transformation. Anyone can come to CUNY, and the sky's the limit as far as achievement goes. And it is just a thrill to witness. You're changing lives, and that there is no bigger thrill than that. And I agree, there are external measures, whether you're in a top ranking and other schools ask you to come visit and give them guidance on how they should run their schools. But I think basically the fact that we're all rowing in the same direction in terms of mission of public higher education, that's what I think makes us all feel successful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dean Pearl. And ladies, thank you all for sharing your insight, your experiences, for your vulnerability, and for taking time out of your busy schedules. I'm sure that you have the next thing on your calendar to get to. Speaking of art of the pivot. So just a couple of takeaways. What we've heard today is ask for help and then be open and ready to receive it. Learn the art of the pivot, be tolerant of ambiguity, be resilient, and create networks on your campus, across the university, because as they noted, mentorship comes not just from those above, it comes laterally as well, from your colleagues, from your mentors. So thank you all again. I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation and that you'll be able to take this back to your campuses and have discussions and build off of this. So on that note, we're now going to pivot to our next speaker. And it's my pleasure to introduce my esteemed colleague, friend, and mentor, Denise Patrick. Denise is a lecturer at Baruch College and is CEO of D. Patrick Consulting. She is a leadership and communication consultant with more than 25 years of business and academic experience. Denise focuses on individual and team communication, leadership, organizational change, and innovation. In addition to teaching in the Department of Communication Studies and executive programs at Baruch College, Denise has also taught at Temple University and the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Denise, you have the virtual floor. Denise is a lecturer at Baruch College and is CEO of D. Patrick Consulting. She is a leadership and communication consultant with more than 25 years of business and academic experience. Denise focuses on individual and team communication, leadership, organizational change, and innovation. In addition to teaching in the Department of Communication Studies and executive programs at Baruch College, Denise has also taught at Temple University and the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Denise, you have the virtual floor. Denise.
All right, I am just about there. Thank you very much. It's great to be here, Kenya. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you so much for facilitating such an informative and such a wonderful and impactful panel discussion with some really key and fantastic women in our CUNY family. It is certainly my pleasure to be here to get to talk with all of you today who are here on this webinar. And I'm just really excited because this is the second annual that we have had in terms of trying to make sure that we have opportunities to develop women and to provide opportunities for us to learn from each other and to share with each other. And so I am truly, truly excited and very, very happy to be here to be able to talk with you and to talk about something that I hope is pretty interesting for you. What you see over here, right, is actually what we're going to be talking about today. And I have about 30 minutes with you, and then we're going to break for lunch. And so before I get into the content, I do want to direct your attention to the website again. So if you go back to the website, or if you're still on the website and viewing it, if you scroll down and look at the schedule, underneath my session, you'll see a link that says handout. And that handout is something that I will cover a little bit later. And I want you to either download it or have it available to you so that you can record your reflections about all the fantastic things that we've heard today. And also to be able to do two inventories or assessments, one on communication and one on leadership and your leadership style. Next week, when we get back together again, I will be back with you again next week. And instead of today just talking, or next week talking about what I will talk about today, I'll extend that conversation. And next week, we'll get to talk about what we call competitive advantage. So for those of us who are in the business arena and the business world, we kind of get what I mean by competitive advantage. But today, I want to really dovetail on what I have heard from every single speaker from the start of this conference all the way up until what we've just heard from our fantastic panelists. One of the things that we want to do when we walk out of here, and when I say walk out of here, I mean really log off and move on to something else, is to really understand our own place and where we are and where we're trying to get to. We have heard some fantastic advice about asking for help, about listening to when people see something positive in us and what we can do and how we can receive that information and how we probably want to try to begin to internalize that information as well. The other thing that we want to do is to also be able to think about how we take risks, right? We heard about that earlier from one of the speakers, Trustee O'Donnell Tormey, being able to take risks and what that means by taking risks. We also want to think creatively, and I love that from Meera Joshi, right? How she talked about thinking creatively about your skills and experiences. And I'm looking down because I'm looking at these wonderful notes that I have. Also understanding that as we move up and we move on into different realms and to different executive roles, that decision-making becomes more and more important. So let me ground this a little bit with what I want to do and what I want to share with you today. You see 5 different areas here, right? So we see precision, we see goals, we see collaboration, we see relationships, and we see practice. And so today I'm going to take you through those 5 areas to get you ready for the rest of this afternoon and also to get you ready for next week because we're going to come back and do this again. All right. So with the almost 800 people that I saw online when I jumped out to look as an attendant, I want to welcome you and thank you. And let's jump in and let's get started. So you are here with me and we're all here today sharing our time and walking and running and clawing our way sometimes through a journey. And for the next couple of hours today and next week, we are going to be on this fantastic journey of creating our leadership success roadmap. Now, the roadmap that we have and the journey that we have today is going to be brief, right? We won't be able to go all in depth into everything, but I certainly will absolutely highlight some things. It's a brief journey, but it's one that's going to offer everyone opportunities to hear some things that you may not have heard before. You may hear things that you have heard before, and maybe those are things that will actually cement and reinforce what you've learned before. You may have an opportunity to certainly learn some incredible things from some incredible people. And all you really had to do was to show up. That's it. All you really had to do was say, today, I am going to just click on a link and be there and be present. We didn't have to bundle up, put on a coat or anything. We're here and we're available to begin this journey. Realize that as we begin this journey, that you are certainly right now in the right place and you are here at the right time. So all of you who are here, know that you are here in the right place and at the right time. And we are going to begin to embrace that journey, which can be certainly wonderful at times. It can be challenging at times, but at the end of the day, it's our unique journey. So in order for us to get ready, let's delve into the first thing, which is this idea of precision. What does it mean when I talk about precision? You see a quote here that is at the bottom here, and you also see an image of somebody who is an archer. And I used to do archery when I was at my day camp. And so we're talking many years ago, and I loved archery, and I loved it because it was something where I had to focus, and it was something where I had to really kind of pull my full attention into it. And what I mean by full attention is it's not just looking at a target, right? And knowing where you want to make sure that your arrow hits, hopefully in the center or in the bullseye of the target. What we're doing is we're talking about being precise, making sure that, as the definition in the dictionary says, that we have a precision of quality, of condition, or a fact of being exact and being accurate. This is the same concept and the same principle I want us to walk away with today when we think about our journey and how we move from one phase and one step in our lives, particularly our professional lives, into another. This quote I love, and I pulled this, and it says, precision is, after all, not only a form of responsibility and a kind of pleasure, but an instrument of compassion. To be precise requires care, time, and attention to the person, place, or process being described. And today and every day from here on out, when you think of what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go, remember that when you're being precise, when I'm trying to be precise, when we're trying to be accurate, we're being compassionate to those around us, but more importantly, we're being compassionate to ourselves. We are taking that time to breathe in that moment, just like right before I would pull that arrow and before I would be able to see where it would go, to really focus and to hone in on where I was trying to get that arrow to go, very much like our own careers. Now that we've talked about precision, that takes me to the next thing, right? Which is goals, right? We're talking about goals. We want to be very precise with the goals that we choose. And remember that, as you see here, it is very much like Stephen Covey addressed. It's that second habit where we begin with the end in mind. Now, I am pretty certain that out of the 800 or so or more people who are sitting here on this webinar, someone has had to have heard of Stephen Covey and the 7 habits, right? Well, the second habit is to begin with the end in mind. And if you've ever read that book, we know that those who are successful are the ones who really kind of say, I have a vision and I know what I want to do, and I'm going to figure out how to get there. And what Covey talked about in starting with the end in mind or beginning with the end in mind, it encompasses 2 things. And the first 2 that you see down here is mental creation. And then the second one is a physical creation. So let's start with the mental creation. Here's the thing. Without a vision and without intention, it's going to be very challenging for us to really get where we want to go. What it says, and I'm quoting this directly from the Franklin Covey website, says is, first, there is a mental creation, which is the first thing, which is what we see, it's in our mind. The second thing is then the physical creation. It's the thing, the outcome, the deliverable, if you want to, right? Use that as a term. So the physical creation is the thing that follows the mental creation. And it's very much like thinking of it this way. We can't create beautiful architecture, for example, in our fantastic city of New York. We can't create bridges and buildings and skylines, nor can we create these three examples here of women who might be an executive, an entrepreneur, a college president, a dean, a chancellor. We can't create any of those things if we don't have the conscious effort and have precise ways of thinking about what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. Again, quoting directly from the Franklin Covey Institute site, it says if you don't make a conscious effort to visualize who you are and what you want in life, then you empower other people and circumstances to shape you and your life by default. I'm going to say that again because I feel like somebody might have missed that, right? And I want to make sure we hear this again. If we don't make a conscious effort to visualize who we are and what we want in life, then we empower other people and circumstances to shape our lives by default. And that's certainly not what we want, or else we wouldn't be here today trying to learn something different and trying to advance what we're trying to do in our lives professionally. So now that I've shared that, let's look at the next item. And the next item is this. It's collaboration. It's working with others. So when we talk about collaboration, we've heard it from just about every single speaker prior to me coming onto the screen. Collaboration is just the nature of the beast. And I can think of two questions that came in a little bit earlier. And so I'll try to rephrase and reframe one of them. One question asked specifically about how do we deal with other people who may be challenging or we may have a conflict with that other person, regardless of whether that person is a man or a woman. In the case of this question, it happened to be a man. In the response to that, I would say that the lesson that we have to take away is that we must collaborate with other people. For me, as an instructor, as a faculty member, as someone who has sat on all kinds of different task forces at Baruch, who has also been on the faculty student disciplinary committee and chaired it, and also having had the pleasure of working with some fantastic women with our Women's Leadership Initiative. We must collaborate in order to see growth and development, not just in the organization, but in ourselves. And there are moments on our campus or with my clients, right? I also have a business, or people where it might be potential clients, where I might not get along quite so well with them initially. And what the rule of thumb is you've got to figure out what that common ground is. Figure out and remember this quote that you see here from Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. Now, I normally would go into a very long 2-day workshop about conflict management and how we do that, but we don't have that kind of time today. So the quick takeaway that I can give you is, if you find yourself in some kind of a situation where you might be in a conflict with another individual, take an opportunity to step back and think about, where can I build common ground with this person? This isn't about personality at this stage. This is about critical thinking, and this really is about making sure that the job or the deliverable gets done and gets handled. When we do that, we get to do something really nice, is we become stronger and better at being leaders, and we then begin to step into that executive level. If you think that people who are at the C-suite level don't have issues with others, you are sorely mistaken. But the one thing you might not see on the day-to-day basis is how they have learned to put some of that stuff aside, some of that personal feeling aside, and really say, I need to focus and hone in on what we're trying to accomplish. One of the things that we do as leaders, and one of the things that executive leaders do, is they think about how they can build trust by working with others on a team. As Patrick Lencioni says, the only way to build trust is to do that by overcoming our need for invulnerability. And sometimes we have to really think about how we can be a little bit vulnerable in the moment, but at the same time, still protecting who we are as an individual. It's a tricky balance, but it's a balance that is certainly worth trying to do when you're trying to move to the next levels. So now that I've talked to you about a couple of things, we've talked about precision, we've talked about goals, I've talked about collaboration, I've talked about how we want to make sure that we have a vision for what we're trying to do and to really be intentional about that vision. So now I want to move on to the next thing, which is relationships. And in just again, every single person that has spoken earlier has talked about relationships and how important it is to build those relationships. The quote here that you see in front of you is from Stephen Covey. It says, when the trust account is high, communication is easy, instant, and effective. Well, let's think about that. When the trust account is high, think of your bank account. When your bank account funds are high, it is certainly easier to do certain things. I know I find that for myself. The same thing applies when we talk about trust. When we have a very high trust account, meaning people may have poured in to that trust account, right? And we think about it this way. We say, or there is a saying that, it's very easy to lose trust, but it takes a very long time to build that trust. What executive leaders have learned and what they, again, have honed in on, and this is not just from our people here in CUNY, right, in our CUNY system and our CUNY family. This is something that I've learned by talking with CEOs, with talking with a chancellor, with talking with CFOs, people in the C-suite at major organizations. I'm talking, banking, I'm talking like, top banks or even, top nonprofit organizations. What they've shared with me is that they have learned that they must work at building relationships in order to build the trust. And they have to learn how to build trust and build relationships with all kinds of people. Relationships should be sought after, should be created and developed and sustained. And if you notice and you kind of watch, I heard on the panel earlier talking about shadowing someone. Take an opportunity and ask, can I shadow you on a day just to see what you do? And what you may find is that the people that you shadow are really trying to talk with others and also build or maintain and sustain relationships at the same time. For example, the executive team, right? The cabinetry of our campuses, the cabinet of the City University of New York, right? The chancellery, that cabinet, they need to establish relationships not just with each other. They're really tasked with shaping relationships with people outside of the City University of New York. If we hadn't had that and hadn't been able to establish these relationships, perhaps we wouldn't have all of these fantastic people coming to talk with us today and with next week. So as you practice and as you think about how do I do that? How do I build relationships? It starts with communication. It starts with knowing how you send information and also how you receive information. Now, this is really a critical thing, and it's an important thing to understand, because when you look at that handout and you take that communication style assessment, which we'll talk more about next week, you will begin to get an understanding of how you tend to listen to information and certain things that you tend to listen for, and even how you may automatically share information with each other or with other people. The lesson in this is going to be, how do you flex to someone else's style so that you both come to a shared meaning and a shared understanding? Ultimately, through the act of communicating, These relationships get built on these two things, communication and trust. And again, you'll have that opportunity to be able to assess not only your communication style, but also your leadership style. So now that we've talked about these several things, let's move to the next one. The next and the last one is practice. And this is one of my favorite ones to talk about because it's leadership as practice. The reason it becomes something that's so fun and so exciting for me to talk about is because my doctorate happens to be in business management and my focus is on leadership. And so you can imagine how many articles I have read over the past few years about leadership, and I'm still reading about it. Now, leadership is something where we think about it in one way. And this is, I think, how most people tend to think about it. And I do talk about this in my classes whenever I teach leadership or management. People tend to think about leaders or leadership as the person who happens to be at the top of the organization. And as you go down, right, the levels within an organization, there are no such thing as leaders. And that is absolutely incorrect. What is a more correct way of looking at it is to say that leadership happens at every level of the organization. And notice I changed the term. It's leadership happens at every level of the organization. The leader is the individual. And we tend to use the term manager and leader interchangeably. But if we think about the term leadership, leadership is the act of, all right? It's the act of doing the leading. So let's get into this. When we talk about leadership as practice, it's a newer way of talking about it. And it's something that I encourage my clients to really begin to embrace. One of my most recent clients, I actually sat with the management team and I said, okay, listen, I know you guys are the leadership team, but we have to help people understand that leadership happens at every level. And it's a practice. It's something that we do every single day. It's not like nirvana. And I think that's how sometimes people tend to think about it. It's something we aspire to get to, but it's something that you can do right now. So the quote here that you see is actually from the person who developed this construct, right? This theory, this idea. And he says, so where do we find leadership? We find it in the practices in which it may be occurring. If you look at these images, I hope you get the idea and the understanding that it happens every single place where we are. It happens in the subway. It happens in a restaurant. It happens when you are in the mailroom. It happens when you are talking with a colleague. It happens in the classroom. It happens in the registrar's office. It happens in the enrollment management office. It happens at CUNY Central, in different areas in CUNY Central. It happens every single place where people are, regardless of what the context may be. So ultimately, how is this different? We want to look at our traits and our skills and our, I guess I could say, our characteristics and realize that that's only a portion of who we are as an individual. And it might be a very significant portion of who we are as an individual, who we might be. But ultimately, we're not trying to gain a trait or a characteristic. We are trying to gain skills, and we're trying to gain aptitude, and we're trying to become really good at competencies around leadership. But at the end of the day, we want to really practice it. So for us, we want to realize that we can create these opportunities. And I hope that as you go through the workshops this afternoon, that you walk away and write down some areas where you feel that you may want to grow and where you may want to develop. Ultimately, at the end of what we're going to accomplish is really going to be, how do we develop? How do we get on a development track? How do we grow as individuals and continue on a path that just gets us where we want to be every single day. So now these are all of the competencies, I would say, in terms of what we need when we want to become the executive leader. The second question, or one of the questions that I also received, and I want to address that, is what are some of the skills or what are some of the competencies that women can take on? And my stance is really, as a leader, it almost, for me, doesn't matter, male, female. Yes, there are certain things that we women do as mothers, as caregivers, perhaps, and we do realize and recognize, particularly from, I believe, Dress for Success just recently did a study, as well as some others, around how this pandemic has really impacted women. But at the end of the day, the skills and the competencies that we want to look at ourselves as executives and as leaders, end of story. So these things that you see in front of you, being precise, having goals, being able to collaborate with other people and trying to find ways to make it work, being a strong team member, being ethical, being innovative, having relationships and nurturing those relationships. And then ultimately at the end of this, being able to practice leadership every single day. Now, I recognize that I can't see you all right now, but I really want you all to just think about one or two things that you want to work on and that you want to get out of each workshop today and next week. This is a great opportunity for all of us, and I'll be in at least one or two of these other workshops. It's a great opportunity for us to take knowledge from someone else and to then begin to apply that knowledge in our day-to-day. Normally when I talk about how we develop and what should I do, and I'm sure somebody somewhere has got this question, well, where do I start? What do I do? I have all of this great inspirational information, but I don't really know where to start. The first thing is to start with these skills of knowing what goal you want and what you want to get out of that. And when I talk about goal and what you want to get out of that, I'm not talking necessarily just about a title. The titles are fantastic and they are great. And I think everyone on this webinar is excited about trying to move to a different title or, trying something new or moving up or moving over. But ultimately, what is it that we want to do in terms of how I can grow as an individual? And trust me, I think we heard this a little bit earlier, some iteration of this. As you grow, people will see that you will grow. I'll tell you that in my own experience, it has been such a pleasure, honestly, and I really mean this, and it has been a joy to be a part of Baruch. And I say that because I am an alum. So I was an undergrad at Baruch, and then to come back and to be faculty, and then to be faculty and to be placed on different committees and to work with deans or to work in the president's office or to do work with different offices around there, and even to have the opportunity to participate in this conference. It's because people see what you bring to the table. And so when you bring something to the table, you want to be positive about what you're bringing to the table. You want to be honest about what you're bringing to the table. You absolutely want to be authentic about what you bring to the table. And you also want to be a decision maker and a problem solver. If you can do those things at wherever level you're ready to do it, and I say this in the most genuine way of meeting you wherever you happen to be on your journey. When you do those things, people really will see it and they really will support you. And if you feel that that is not the case, ask in a very kind way, wondering what I can do to develop, or I'm wondering if I can attend another conference, or I'm wondering if perhaps I could be on this particular project because it seems like it's a stretch project for me. People don't always hand it to you, right? And I know we talked about that earlier in an earlier speech that we heard. It's not always going to just get handed in your lap. sometimes you have to step up and ask for it. And so if you're uncomfortable about asking about it from a particular leader in your organization, start small, start with local, or start with your peers and your colleagues. That being said, I really do want to begin to close this down because it's about lunchtime. And I want to make sure that we can eat and be ready for the afternoon. Lunch will be 30 minutes. And then what you'll do is go and get the link that you have for the session that you'll be going into. And I really, again, hope that you will enjoy these sessions and take as much as you can out of it. I have appreciated being able to sit here and to talk with you and to share what bit of knowledge I can for at least this first run of part 1. And I really am genuinely looking forward to taking on part 2 next week. So when you come next week, make sure that you filled out the communication style inventory and the leadership style inventory. And yeah, you can peek ahead and you can begin to fill in some other things as well. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing this time with me and for just sharing everything, your time, your space, your everything. Now go get some food and enjoy the afternoon. I'm going to turn it over now. Thank you very much.